Sarah Martinez drove down the quiet country road with her windows down. The warm Saturday morning air felt good on her face. She wore a simple blue t-shirt and jeans. Her long dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail. No one looking at her would guess she was a general in the United States Army. This was her favorite part of the weekend. No uniforms, no salutes, no meetings. Just her car, and the open road. She had worked hard to get where she was. At 45, she commanded respect from thousands of soldiers. But today, she just wanted to be Sarah, not General Martinez. The road curved through tall pine trees. Sarah loved this drive. It reminded her of home in Texas. She was thinking about stopping for coffee when she saw something ahead. Smoke was rising from the road. As she got closer, she could see two cars had crashed into each other. Sarah slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. One car was turned on its side. The other had hit a tree. Steam came from under both hoods. She could see two police cars already there. Their red and blue lights flashed in the morning sun. Two police officers stood near the crashed cars. One was tall and thin with short brown hair. His name tag said Blake. The other was shorter with a round face. His tag said Rodriguez. They looked young, maybe in their late 20s. Both seemed confused about what to do. Sarah got out of her car and walked toward the crash. She could hear someone moaning from inside the overturned car. Her military training kicked in right away. She had seen many accidents during her 20 years in the Army. She knew how to help. "Excuse me, officers," Sarah said as she approached. "I have medical training. Can I help?" Officer Blake looked up at her with sharp eyes. He was sweating even though the morning was cool. "Ma'am, you need to stay back. This is a police scene." Sarah stopped but didn't back away. "I understand, officer, but someone in that car sounds hurt. I'm trained in emergency medical care. I can help while you wait for the ambulance." Officer Rodriguez wiped his forehead with his sleeve. "We called for an ambulance, but it will take at least 20 minutes to get here. This is a small town, we only have one." The moaning from the overturned car got louder. Sarah could see blood on the window. Every second mattered in situations like this. She had learned that lesson many times in her military career. "Please," Sarah said, taking a step forward. "Let me check on them. I know what I'm doing." Officer Blake held up his hand. "I said stay back, lady. We don't know who you are. For all we know, you could make things worse." Sarah felt her patience being tested. In the Army, when she gave orders, people listened. When she offered help, people said thank you. But she remembered she was not in uniform. To these officers, she was just another person trying to get involved. "My name is Sarah Martinez," she said calmly. "I've been trained in combat medicine. I've saved lives in war zones. I can help these people." The two officers looked at each other. Blake shook his head. "Combat medicine? What are you? Some kind of army nurse or something?" "Something like that," Sarah said. She didn't want to make a big deal about her rank. She just wanted to help. The person in the overturned car started calling for help. "Please, someone help me. I can't feel my legs." Sarah's training told her this could be a spinal injury. Time was very important. She started walking toward the car, but Officer Blake stepped in front of her. "I told you to stay back," he said loudly. "Are you deaf?" Sarah stopped again. She took a deep breath. Getting angry would not help anyone. "Officer, someone in that car might have a serious injury. Every minute we wait could matter. Please just let me check on them." "No way," Blake said. "We don't know you. You could be anyone. You could be drunk. You could be on drugs. You could make things worse." Rodriguez looked nervous. "Blake, maybe we should let her help. She seems to know what she's talking about." "Are you crazy?" Blake snapped at his partner. "We let some random woman mess with an accident scene? What if something goes wrong? What if she hurts someone? Who gets blamed? Us. That's who." Sarah could see the fear in both officers' eyes. They were young and probably had not dealt with many serious accidents. They were scared of making the wrong choice, but their fear was putting lives at risk. "Officers, I understand your concern," Sarah said. But I promise you I know what I'm doing. I've dealt with injuries much worse than this. I can stabilize whoever is in that car until the ambulance gets here. The moaning from the car got weaker. Sarah's heart started beating faster. This was not good. The person might be going into shock. "Look, lady," Blake said, his voice getting harder. "I don't care if you think you're some kind of doctor. You're not touching anything. You're not going near that car." End of story. Sarah felt frustration building inside her. In the army, she commanded 3,000 soldiers. She made decisions that affected missions worth millions of dollars. She had saved countless lives in Iraq and Afghanistan. But here, 2 small-town police officers were treating her like she was nobody. "Can I at least show you my identification?" Sarah asked. "It might help you understand that I'm qualified to help." "Sure," Blake said with a smirk. "Show us your ID." Sarah walked back toward her car. Her military ID was in her gym bag in the trunk. She always kept it there when she was off duty. As she walked, she heard the injured person call out again. The voice was getting weaker. When she reached her car, she opened the trunk. Her gym bag was under some shopping bags. She moved the bags aside and unzipped the gym bag. Her wallet with her military ID was right on top next to her workout clothes. But when she turned around, both officers were watching her very carefully. Their hands were on their gun belts. They looked suspicious, like they thought she might pull out a weapon. "What's taking so long?" Blake called out. "It shouldn't take 5 minutes to get an ID." Sarah grabbed her wallet and walked back to them. But as she approached, she could see something had changed. Both officers looked tense. Their body language was different. They stood with their feet apart, ready for trouble. "Here's my ID," Sarah said, holding out her wallet. But Officer Blake didn't look at it. Instead, he stared at her face. "You know what? I think you're acting suspicious, taking too long to get a simple ID, looking around like you're planning something." Sarah was confused. "I'm not acting suspicious. I'm trying to help someone who's hurt." "That's what they all say," Blake said. "Rodriguez, what do you think? Doesn't she seem suspicious to you?" Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. "I don't know, Blake. She just seems like she wants to help." "Wake up, Rodriguez," Blake said. "This is exactly how criminals work. They show up at accident scenes. They act helpful. Then they rob people or steal from the cars while everyone's distracted." Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. "Officer, you're making a mistake. I'm not a criminal. I'm trying to help save someone's life." But Blake was not listening anymore. He had made up his mind. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to put your hands where I can see them." The situation was spinning out of control. Sarah realized these officers were not going to listen to reason. They had decided she was a threat, and nothing she said would change their minds. Behind them, the calls for help from the overturned car were getting weaker and weaker. Sarah raised her hand slowly. She kept her military ID in her right hand where the officers could see it. "Officers, please look at my identification. It will explain everything." Officer Blake stepped closer to her. His face was red with anger. "Drop whatever you're holding now." "It's just my ID," Sarah said calmly. "The one you asked to see." "I said drop it," Blake shouted. Sarah let her wallet fall to the ground. The military ID card slipped out and landed face up on the asphalt. From where she stood, she could see her photo and the words, U.S. Army, printed clearly on it. Officer Rodriguez bent down and picked up the card. His eyes got wide as he read it. "Blake, you need to see this." But Blake was not interested in the ID anymore. He was focused on Sarah's calm behavior. In his experience, most people got nervous or scared when police officers yelled at them. Sarah's calmness made him more suspicious. "Why aren't you scared?" Blake demanded. "Most people would be shaking right now, but you're just standing there like nothing's happening." Sarah had been in real danger many times during her military career. She had been shot at by enemy soldiers. She had been in buildings that were bombed. 2 small-town police officers did not scare her, but she knew saying that would only make things worse. "I'm trying to stay calm so we can solve this problem," Sarah said. "There's still someone in that car who needs help." The moaning from the overturned car had stopped. This was not a good sign. The person inside might be unconscious. Or worse. Rodriguez held up the military ID. Blake, seriously, look at this. This woman is a general in the army. Blake glanced at the card but shook his head. That could be fake. You can buy fake IDs online for $50. Criminals do it all the time. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. Officer, why would I have a fake military ID? What would be the point? To make people trust you, Blake said. To make them think you're important. Then when their guard is down, you rob them. That doesn't make any sense, Rodriguez said to his partner. Why would she come to an accident scene to rob people? There are two of us here. There are witnesses. Driving by. Blake's face got even redder. He did not like being questioned by his younger partner. Rodriguez, you're new to this job. You don't understand how criminals think. They're smart. They plan things out. Sarah tried one more time to reason with them. Officers, please. Let's say you're right and my ID is fake. Let's say I'm some kind of criminal. What harm could I do by checking on an injured person? You'll be right there watching me. If I try anything suspicious, you can stop me immediately. The logic made sense to Rodriguez. He nodded and looked at Blake. She's right. We can watch her every move. And if she really does know medical stuff, she could help. But Blake was too angry to think logically. He felt like everyone was questioning his authority. First, this woman had ignored his orders. Now his own partner was taking her side. No, Blake said loudly. I'm the senior officer here. I make the decisions. And I'm telling you both, this woman is not going near that car. Sarah looked toward the overturned vehicle. She could see a man's arm hanging out of the broken window. It was not moving. Time was running out. Officer Blake, Sarah said, using his name to try to connect with him. I respect that you're in charge here, but that person might be dying. As a human being, don't you want to do everything possible to save them? Don't try to guilt-trip me, Blake snapped. I'm doing my job. My job is to keep people safe. That means keeping suspicious people away from crime scenes. This isn't a crime scene, Sarah said. It's an accident scene, and I'm not suspicious. I'm a soldier trying to help. Blake laughed, but there was no humor in it. A soldier, you? You're just a woman in jeans and a t-shirt. Soldiers wear uniforms. They don't drive around in civilian cars pretending to be heroes. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. Blake, soldiers don't wear uniforms all the time. They have days off like everyone else. Whose side are you on? Blake demanded of his partner. Mine or hers? The question put Rodriguez in a difficult position. He was new to the police force. Blake was training him. He needed Blake's support to succeed in his job. But he could see that Blake was making a mistake. I'm on the side of doing the right thing, Rodriguez said quietly. This made Blake even angrier. He felt like he was losing control of the situation. In his mind, if he let this woman help, it would look like she had won, and he had lost. He could not let that happen. Fine, Blake said. You want to know what the right thing is? The right thing is to follow procedure. And procedure says we secure the scene and wait for trained medical personnel. Sarah had been patient long enough. Officer, I am trained medical personnel. I've been saving lives for 20 years. I've performed surgery in battlefield conditions. I can help that person. Prove it, Blake said with a challenge in his voice. How? Sarah asked. Tell me something only a real medic would know. Sarah thought for a moment. The person in that car stopped making noise. That could mean they're unconscious from blood loss. It could mean they have a head injury, or it could mean they're going into shock. All of these conditions get worse, with time. The longer we wait, the more likely they are to die. Rodriguez nodded. That sounds right to me. But Blake was not convinced. Anyone could learn that from watching TV medical shows. Sarah felt her military training kicking in. When dealing with impossible people, sometimes you had to go around them, not through them. Officer Rodriguez, you seem like a reasonable person. Will you at least call your supervisor? Tell them the situation, let them decide. Rodriguez looked at Blake nervously. Maybe we should call Sergeant Williams. We're not calling anyone, Blake said firmly. I can handle this situation myself. At that moment, a car drove by slowly. The driver saw the police cars and the accident. He pulled over and got out. He was an older man with gray hair wearing work clothes. "Officers, is everyone okay?" the man called out. "I saw the accident from up the road. Do you need help?" Blake spun around to face the new arrival. "Sir, please get back in your car and move along. This is a police matter." But the older man had sharp eyes. He looked at the overturned car, then at Sarah standing with her hands up, then at the military ID on the ground. "Wait a minute," the man said. "Are you arresting someone for trying to help at an accident?" "Sir, I won't ask you again," Blake said, his hand moving toward his weapon. "Get back in your car and leave." The older man did not move. "I'm not leaving until I understand what's happening here. This doesn't look right." Rodriguez picked up the military ID from the ground and showed it to the older man. "She says she's a general in the army. She wants to help the injured person." The older man studied the ID carefully. "This looks real to me. And even if it wasn't, what's the harm in letting her help? You boys are way out of your league here." Blake's face turned purple with rage. "Everyone thinks they know how to do my job better than I do. Well, here's a news flash. I'm the police officer here. I have the authority. Not her, not you, me." The older man stepped back, surprised by Blake's outburst. "Son, calm down. No one's questioning your authority. We just want to help someone who's hurt." Sarah could see that Blake was beyond reasoning. His pride had been hurt, and now he was making decisions based on emotion instead of logic. She had seen this before in young soldiers who were not ready for command positions. "Officer Blake," Sarah said in the calm, authoritative voice she used with her troops, "I understand you're under pressure. This is a difficult situation. But right now our personal feelings don't matter. What matters is saving a life." Blake looked at her with pure hatred. "You think you can just take over, don't you? You think, because you have some fancy fake ID, you can push me around?" "I don't want to push anyone around," Sarah said. "I just want to help." But Blake had made his final decision. "Well, you're not helping. You're interfering with police business, and interfering with police business is a crime." He pulled out his handcuffs. Rodriguez's eyes went wide. "Blake, what are you doing?" "What I should have done 10 minutes ago," Blake said. He walked toward Sarah. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for interfering with a police investigation and suspicious behavior." Sarah could not believe this was happening. "Officer, this is a huge mistake. When your supervisor finds out what you've done, you're going to be in serious trouble." "We'll see about that," Blake said. He grabbed Sarah's wrist and snapped one handcuff on it. The older man stepped forward. "Officer, I'm a witness here. This woman hasn't done anything wrong. She's just trying to help." Blake spun around and pointed his finger at the man. "Are you interfering with police business too? Because I can arrest you as well." The older man held up his hands and backed away, but he pulled out his cell phone and started recording. "What are you doing?" Blake demanded. "Making sure there's a record of what happened here," the old man said. "This doesn't feel right." Rodriguez looked sick to his stomach. He knew this situation was spiraling out of control, but he did not know how to stop it. Blake was his training officer. Going against him could end Rodriguez's career before it really started. Blake finished handcuffing Sarah and stepped back. "There, now we can wait for the ambulance in peace." Sarah stood quietly with her hands cuffed behind her back. More cars had stopped along the road. People got out to see what was happening. Some recognized the accident scene, but most were confused by what they saw. A woman in handcuffs stood next to two police officers while someone was still trapped in an overturned car. Officer Blake looked around nervously. This was not how he had planned things. He wanted to handle the situation quietly and efficiently. Instead, he now had an audience watching his every move. "Everyone move along," Blake shouted at the growing crowd. "There's nothing to see here." But people did not move. An older woman in a blue dress stepped forward. "Officer, what's going on? Why is that lady in handcuffs? Shouldn't you be helping whoever's in that car?" Blake felt his control slipping away completely. He had thought arresting the interfering woman would solve his problems. Instead, it had created bigger ones. Now everyone was questioning his decisions. Ma'am, please step back, Rodriguez said to the woman in the blue dress. His voice was much calmer than Blake's. We have everything under control. The woman looked at the overturned car, then at Sarah in handcuffs. It doesn't look under control to me. It looks like that person might need help and you're wasting time arresting people. Sarah had been watching the crowd grow. She realized this situation was about to get much worse for Officer Blake. His pride had led him to make bad decisions. Now those decisions were being witnessed by dozens of people. Officer Blake, Sarah said quietly, so only he could hear. You still have time to fix this. Let me help the injured person. Tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding. No one has to know you made a mistake. Blake looked at her with surprise. You're trying to help me? After I arrested you? I'm trying to help everyone, Sarah replied, including you. For a moment, Blake seemed to consider her offer. Sarah could see doubt in his eyes. Maybe he was starting to realize he had made a mistake. Maybe he would do the right thing. But then someone in the crowd called out, Hey, isn't that a military ID on the ground? A young man bent down and picked up Sarah's ID card. He held it up so everyone could see it. This says she's a general in the U.S. Army. The crowd began talking excitedly. A general? Why would they arrest a general? She was probably trying to help. Blake's face went pale. This was his worst nightmare. Not only had he arrested someone who was trying to help, he had arrested a high-ranking military officer. And it was all happening in front of witnesses who were recording everything on their phones. That ID is probably fake, Blake said loudly, trying to convince himself as much as the crowd. The young man who had picked up the ID studied it carefully. It looks real to me. It has all the security features. The photo matches her face, and the older man in the crowd stepped forward. Son, I spent 30 years in the military. I know what a real military ID looks like. This is the real thing. Blake felt trapped. He could not back down now without looking like a fool. But continuing forward would only make things worse. He looked at Rodriguez, hoping for support, but his partner looked sick with worry. Even if the ID is real, Blake said desperately, that doesn't give her the right to interfere with police business. Interfere? Called out the woman in the blue dress. She was trying to help someone who's hurt. How is that interfering? More people began arriving. Word was spreading through the small town that something big was happening at the accident scene. Some people recognized Sarah from previous community events even though she was not in uniform. Wait, said a middle-aged man in work clothes. I know her. She spoke at my daughter's high school last year about leadership. She's definitely military. Sarah remained calm despite the growing chaos around her. She had been in much worse situations during her military career. But she was worried about the person in the overturned car. Too much time had passed without medical attention. Blake was running out of options. The crowd was getting bigger and more hostile toward him. People were clearly on Sarah's side. He needed to regain control of the situation, but he did not know how. That's when he made his worst decision yet. Everyone back off, Blake shouted, pulling out his pepper spray. I'm warning you, stay back. The crowd gasped and stepped backward. Parents pulled their children closer. The festive atmosphere of people watching an unusual event turned fearful. Rodriguez grabbed Blake's arm. What are you doing? Put that away. They're getting out of control, Blake said, his hand shaking as he held the pepper spray. I need to restore order. Sarah could see that Blake was having some kind of breakdown. The pressure of making bad decisions in front of so many people was too much for him. He was acting like a cornered animal. Officer Blake, Sarah said in her calmest voice, put the spray away. No one here is threatening you. These are just concerned citizens. Concerned citizens? Blake laughed, but it sounded hysterical. They're a mob. They're trying to undermine my authority. They're trying to understand why you arrested someone for helping, Sarah replied. And honestly, so am I. Blake spun around to face her. You want to know why? Because you wouldn't listen. Because you thought you were better than me. Because you acted like my badge didn't mean anything. Sarah realized that this was not really about her interfering with the accident scene. This was about Blake's insecurity. and his need to feel important. He saw her confidence as a challenge to his authority. "Officer, I never meant to make you feel that way," Sarah said. "I respect your badge and your authority. I just wanted to help someone who was hurt." But Blake was beyond reasoning now. The crowd, the cameras, the pressure of making mistake after mistake had pushed him over the edge. "You know what?" Blake said, putting away the pepper spray. "If you want to help so badly, let's see how you like being helped." He grabbed Sarah by the arm and started walking toward the large oak tree in the center of the town square, just 50 feet from the accident scene. "What are you doing?" Rodriguez asked, following them. "I'm securing the prisoner," Blake replied. "She's been acting suspicious and uncooperative. I need to make sure she doesn't try to escape or interfere further." Sarah could not believe what was happening. "Officer, this is not necessary. I'm not going to run away. I'm not resisting arrest." But Blake was not listening. He forced Sarah to sit down with her back against the large oak tree. Then he pulled out plastic zip ties from his belt. "Blake, don't do this," Rodriguez pleaded. "This is going too far." The crowd watched in shocked silence as Blake secured Sarah's handcuffs to zip ties, then wrapped the zip ties around the tree trunk. When he was finished, Sarah was essentially tied to the tree, unable to move more than a few inches in any direction. "There," Blake said, breathing heavily. "Now you can sit there and think about interfering with police business." The crowd erupted in angry shouts. "This is crazy. You can't tie people to trees. Someone call the state police." An older woman pulled out her cell phone. "I'm calling the governor's office. This is outrageous." Blake looked around at all the angry faces and suddenly realized what he had done. He had tied a U.S. Army general to a tree in the middle of town in front of dozens of witnesses with cameras. The full weight of his actions hit him like a truck. Rodriguez stared at his partner in horror. "Blake, untie her right now. This is insane." But Blake could not untie her. Doing so would be admitting he had made a terrible mistake. His pride would not let him back down, even though every instinct told him he was wrong. "She stays there until the situation is resolved," Blake said weakly. Sarah sat against the tree with her hands secured behind her back, the rough bark pressed against her shirt. People all around her were taking pictures and videos. She could hear them calling friends and family members, describing what they were seeing. This was humiliating, but Sarah had endured worse during her military training. She focused on maintaining her dignity and composure. She would not let this small-town police officer break her spirit. "Ma'am, are you okay?" asked the woman in the blue dress, kneeling down beside the tree. "I'm fine," Sarah replied calmly. "Thank you for asking." "This is wrong," the woman said, tears in her eyes. "This is just wrong." More people knelt down around Sarah, offering her water, asking if she needed anything. Their kindness in the face of Blake's cruelty touched her heart. Meanwhile, the person in the overturned car had been silent for almost 30 minutes. Sarah feared the worst, but there was nothing she could do now. Blake had made sure of that. Young man in the crowd held up his phone. "Ma'am, I've posted this on social media. People need to see what's happening here." Sarah nodded. "Thank you, but please, also call for medical help for the person in that car. They've been waiting too long." The irony was not lost on anyone. The woman who was tied to a tree for trying to help was still thinking about helping others. Blake stood nearby, realizing that his career was probably over. Every phone in the crowd was recording his actions. By tomorrow, the whole country would know what he had done. Rodriguez walked over to the overturned car and peered through the broken window. He saw a man inside, unconscious but still breathing. "Blake, we need to get this person medical attention right now." But Blake was staring at Sarah tied to the tree, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. He had let his pride and insecurity turn a simple accident scene into a disaster that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The first video went online within minutes. A teenage girl named Emma had been driving with her mother when they stopped to see the accident. She started recording when she saw the police officer tie the woman to the tree. "Oh my God, Mom," Emma said as she filmed. "Are you seeing this? They actually tied her to a tree. This is insane." Emma's mother, Janet, shook her head in disbelief. "Honey, make sure you get everything. People need to see this." Emma posted the video on her social media with the caption, "Police in Millbrook tied a woman to a tree for trying to help accident victims. She says she's a military officer. This is crazy. Justice for Tree Lady, Jers Millbrook." Within an hour, the video had been shared hundreds of times. People across the state were watching a woman in civilian clothes sitting calmly against an oak tree, while angry citizens surrounded her, taking pictures and offering help. The second video came from Marcus Johnson, a local mechanic who had stopped to help with the accident. His video showed Officer Blake's face clearly as he secured the zip ties around the tree. Marcus had been recording since Blake pulled out the pepper spray. "This is Officer Blake of the Millbrook Police," Marcus said into his phone camera. "He just tied this lady to a tree because she wanted to help someone who got hurt in a car crash. Her military ID is right there on the ground. This is wrong on every level." Marcus uploaded his video to 3 different social media platforms. Each post included hashtags like police abuse, military respect, and Millbrook. He also tagged local news stations and civil rights organizations. By noon, both videos had gone viral. News outlets were picking up the story. Radio stations were talking about it. The hashtag, #TreeGeneral, was trending online. 30 miles away, at Fort Harrison, Lieutenant Colonel James Wright was having lunch in the officer's mess when his phone buzzed with a text message. It was his scheduled check-in time with General Martinez. He sent the usual message. "Status report, ma'am?" He waited 5 minutes. No response. This was unusual. General Martinez was always punctual with her check-ins, especially on weekends, when she was off base. Wright tried calling her cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. He tried texting again. Still no response. A feeling of concern started growing in his stomach. Wright had been General Martinez's aide-de-camp for 3 years. He knew her habits better than anyone. She was disciplined, reliable, and always reachable. When she went off base alone, she checked in every 2 hours without fail. He pulled up the location tracking app on his phone. All senior officers had GPS tracking on their personal phones for security reasons. According to the app, General Martinez was in Millbrook, about 30 miles south of the base. She had been in the same location for over an hour. Wright frowned. Millbrook was a small town with nothing much to do. Why would the general stop there for so long? And why wasn't she answering? Her phone? He tried calling one more time. When it went to voicemail again, he decided to investigate. He grabbed his keys and headed for his car. As Wright drove toward Millbrook, he tried to think of reasonable explanations. Maybe the general had stopped for lunch and left her phone in the car. Maybe she was shopping and couldn't hear it ring. Maybe she was helping someone and couldn't answer right away. But his military training told him to prepare for the worst-case scenario. General Martinez was an important target. There were people in the world who would love to capture or harm a high-ranking American military officer. 20 minutes into his drive, Wright's phone rang. It was Colonel Patricia Hayes, the general's second-in-command back at Fort Harrison. "James," Colonel Hayes said when Wright answered. "I just saw something online that I need you to check out. Someone posted a video from Millbrook. There's a woman tied to a tree who looks like our general." Wright's blood went cold. "Tied to a tree? What do you mean?" "I'm sending you the link right now. But James, if this is really her, we have a situation." Wright pulled over to the side of the road and opened the video link on his phone. His worst fears were confirmed. There was General Sarah Martinez sitting against an oak tree with her hands secured behind her back. She looked calm and composed, but she was clearly being held against her will. "Colonel, it's her," Wright said, his voice tight with anger. "Someone has restrained our commanding general." "I was afraid of that," Hayes replied. "I'm looking at 3 different videos now. It appears local police officers did this to her. The videos show her military ID on the ground." Wright felt rage building inside him. General Martinez was not just his commanding officer. She was a mentor and a friend. She had saved his life during a mission in Afghanistan. The thought of her being humiliated like this made his hands shake. "What are your orders, Colonel?" Wright asked. "Get to her location immediately," Hayes said. "I'm calling General Chen to brief him on the situation. Then I'm mobilizing a response team. This ends now." Wright got back on the road and pressed the accelerator to the floor. As he drove, he made phone calls to key personnel at Fort Harrison. Within minutes, word was spreading throughout the base that their commanding general was in trouble. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, no relation to the police officer, was in the motor pool when he got the call. "Pack a convoy," Wright told him. "Full security detail. We're going to extract the general." "What's the threat level?" Rodriguez asked, already moving toward the vehicles. "Unknown. But someone has detained her. We go in ready for anything." "Captain." Lisa Park was in her office reviewing training schedules when her phone rang. "Park here." "Captain, this is Lieutenant Colonel Wright. Drop everything. I need you to coordinate with base legal and public affairs. We have a situation involving General Martinez." "Is she injured?" Park asked, grabbing her keys. "Negative. But she's being held by local police under questionable circumstances. There are videos online. This is going to be a media nightmare." Back in Millbrook, the crowd around the oak tree had grown to over 50 people. Local business owners had closed their shops to come see what was happening. The mayor had arrived, looking confused and worried about the town's reputation. Sarah remained calm despite the chaos around her. She had noticed people taking pictures and making phone calls. She knew that word of this incident would spread quickly. Her aide-de-camp would see the videos eventually. When he did, her soldiers would come looking for her. Officer Blake stood 20 feet away talking on his radio to his supervisor. Sarah could hear parts of the conversation, and it did not sound like Blake was getting the support he expected. "Sergeant Williams, I had to restrain her," Blake was saying. "She was interfering with the scene." The voice on the radio was angry. "Blake, I'm seeing videos of you tying someone to a tree. Please tell me this is not real." "Sir, she wouldn't follow orders. She claimed to be some kind of general, but her ID looked fake." "Her ID looked fake?" "Blake, did you run it through the system? Did you verify anything before you tied her to a tree in front of half the town?" Blake's silence answered the question. In his anger and confusion, he had never actually checked to see if Sarah's military ID was legitimate. He had assumed it was fake because it was easier than admitting he might be wrong. "Sir," Blake said weakly, "I was just trying to maintain order." "By tying someone to a tree?" "Blake, get back to the station immediately. Lieutenant Morrison is on his way to handle the scene." Blake looked around at the crowd of angry faces staring at him. Many people were recording him with their phones. He was going to be famous, but for all the wrong reasons. Officer Rodriguez walked over to his partner. "Blake, we need to untie her. This has gone way too far." "I can't," Blake replied. "Sergeant Williams told me to wait for Lieutenant Morrison." "Blake, look around. Every person here has a camera. This is being broadcast to the entire world. We need to fix this now before it gets worse." But it was already getting worse. News vans were arriving in Millbrook. Reporters were setting up cameras and interviewing people in the crowd. The story was spreading beyond social media to real news outlets. A reporter from the state capitol approached the tree where Sarah sat. "Ma'am, I'm Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. Can you tell us what happened here?" Sarah looked directly into the camera. Her voice was steady and professional. "I stopped to help at an accident scene. I offered my medical training to assist an injured person. The officers refused to let me help and arrested me for interfering with police business." "Is it true that you're a general in the U.S. Army?" "Yes. I'm General Sarah Martinez, commanding officer of the 3rd Infantry Regiment at Fort Harrison." The reporter's eyes widened. This was bigger news than she had realized. "General, how do you feel about being restrained in this manner?" Fry chose her words carefully. "I'm disappointed that a misunderstanding has led to this situation. I hope it can be resolved quickly so that everyone can focus on helping the injured person in that vehicle." Even while tied to a tree, Sarah was showing more leadership and class than the officers who had put her there. The reporter turned to address the camera directly. "This is Jennifer Walsh reporting from Millbrook, where a U.S. Army general has been restrained by local police for attempting to help at an accident scene. We'll have more on this developing story as it unfolds." As the reporter finished her segment, at Fort Harrison, Brigadier General Robert Chen sat in his office staring at his computer screen in disbelief. Colonel Hayes had shown him 3 different videos of General Martinez tied to a tree. Each video had been viewed thousands of times and shared across multiple social media platforms. "This is a disaster," General Chen said, rubbing his temples. "One of our most respected officers is being treated like a common criminal." Colonel Hayes stood at attention beside his desk. "Sir, Lieutenant Colonel Wright is already en route to the scene. I've prepared a full response team, but I wanted your authorization before deploying." General Chen stood up and walked to the window overlooking the base. Hundreds of soldiers were going about their daily duties, unaware that their commanding general was sitting tied to a tree 30 miles away. "Patricia, how many soldiers know about this?" "Word is spreading quickly, sir. Wright made several calls to mobilize resources. The soldiers are asking questions." General Chen had served with Sarah Martinez for 15 years. They had been through combat deployments together. She had saved his life once in Iraq when their convoy was attacked. The thought of her being humiliated made his blood boil. "Colonel, I want every available soldier ready to move in 10 minutes. Full gear. This is a rescue operation." "Yes, sir. What about the local authorities? Should we coordinate with them?" General Chen's expression hardened. "The local authorities created this problem. We'll handle it ourselves." He picked up his phone and dialed the Millbrook Police Department. The desk sergeant answered on the third ring. "Millbrook Police, Sergeant Williams speaking." "Sergeant Williams, this is Brigadier General Robert Chen, commanding officer of Fort Harrison. I believe you have one of my officers in custody." There was a long pause. "Sir, are you referring to the woman who claims to be a general?" "Claims to be?" General Chen's voice rose. "Sergeant, General Sarah Martinez is a decorated officer with 20 years of service. She commands 3,000 soldiers. And according to the videos I'm seeing, your officers have tied her to a tree like an animal." Sergeant Williams felt sick to his stomach. He had seen the videos too. The whole situation was a nightmare, and it was happening on his watch. "General Chen, I'm trying to sort this out. Officer Blake acted without proper authorization. I've ordered him back to the station." "Sergeant, you have exactly 15 minutes to release General Martinez and issue a formal apology. If that doesn't happen, I will personally come to your town with enough soldiers to occupy it." The line went dead. Sergeant Williams stared at the phone, knowing his quiet little police department was about to be invaded by the U.S. Army. Back at the base, soldiers were loading into vehicles at record speed. Master Sergeant Rodriguez had assembled a convoy of 6 military trucks and 2 armored personnel carriers. Each vehicle was filled with armed soldiers in full combat gear. Lieutenant Colonel Wright rode in the lead vehicle, his jaw clenched with anger. He kept checking his phone for updates on General Martinez's condition. The video showed her remaining calm and dignified, but that only made him angrier. She shouldn't have to maintain dignity while being treated like a criminal. "Sir," said Corporal Jenkins, sitting across from Wright in the truck, "what's our mission when we arrive?" "We secure our commanding officer and ensure her safety," Wright replied. "After that, we'll see what the local authorities want to do about this situation." In the second truck, Sergeant First Class Williams was briefing his squad. "Listen up. Soldiers, our general is being held against her will by local police. We don't know if this is incompetence or something worse. We go in ready for anything." The soldiers nodded grimly. General Martinez was beloved by her troops. She had fought alongside many of them in combat. She treated every soldier with respect, regardless of rank. The thought of someone humiliating her was unacceptable. "Sergeant," asked Private Thompson, "what if the police try to stop us? Then they'll learn what happens when you mess with our family," Williams replied. As the convoy rolled through the countryside toward Millbrook, word spread to other military units. Fort Harrison wasn't the only base that knew General Martinez. She had served at installations across the country and had friends throughout the military. At Fort Benning in Georgia, Colonel Marcus Stone was having dinner when he saw the videos on social media. Sarah Martinez had been his classmate at the Yale War College. They had remained friends for 20 years. Stone immediately called his aide-de-camp. "Get me General Chen at Fort Harrison on the phone. Now." 3 minutes later, Stone was connected to Chen's office. "Bob, I just saw what happened to Sarah. What do you need from me?" "Marcus, I appreciate the call, but we have it handled. A full response team is en route. Bob, Sarah has friends all over the military. If you need backup, just say the word. I can have a helicopter full of Rangers in the air in 30 minutes. General Chen smiled grimly. I'll keep that in mind. But right now, I think what we're sending will be more than enough. Similar conversations were happening at military bases across the country. General Martinez had mentored dozens of younger officers during her career. Those officers were now colonels and generals themselves, and they were all watching the situation unfold online. At the Pentagon, a brigadier general named David Park was monitoring social media when he saw a video titled U.S. General Tied to Tree by Police. Park had served under Martinez in Afghanistan. She had recommended him for promotion and helped shape his career. Park immediately called the Army's Public Affairs Office. We have a PR crisis developing. One of our generals is being mistreated by civilian police, and it's all over social media. How bad is it? Asked the public affairs officer. Bad enough that we need to get ahead of this story. The videos are going viral. This is going to be national news within hours. Back in Millbrook, Sarah could hear the military vehicles getting closer. The crowd around the tree had grown to over 100 people. News crews from 3 different TV stations were broadcasting live. The mayor was pacing nervously, making phone calls to county officials. Officer Blake stood near his patrol car, looking like he wanted to disappear. Officer Rodriguez had tried twice to convince him to untie General Martinez, but Blake was paralyzed by the magnitude of his mistake. Blake, Rodriguez said, walking over to his partner. Do you hear that? Those are military vehicles. When they get here, this is going to get much worse for us. Blake looked up at the sound of approaching engines. Maybe they're just passing through. Rodriguez shook his head. No, Blake. They're coming for her. And when they see what we did, there's going to be hell to pay. A woman in the crowd pointed toward the main road. Look, military trucks. Everyone turned to see a convoy of army vehicles approaching the town square. The lead truck had a small flag attached to its antenna. Even from a distance, people could see soldiers in the vehicles. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and concern. She was glad her soldiers were coming to help, but she worried about what might happen when they arrived. The situation was already tense. Adding armed soldiers to the mix could make things much worse. Ma'am, said the woman in the blue dress who had been sitting beside the tree for the past hour, your people are coming. Yes, Sarah replied, but I hope everyone stays calm. My soldiers are well trained, but they're going to be very angry about this situation. The first military truck pulled into the town square and stopped 50 feet from the oak tree. Lieutenant Colonel Wright jumped out before the truck had completely stopped moving. When he saw General Martinez tied to the tree, his face went red with rage. Behind him, soldiers poured out of the vehicles. They were in full combat gear with weapons ready. The sight of dozens of armed soldiers caused the crowd to step back, nervously. Wright walked directly to the tree, ignoring the police officers completely. He knelt down beside General Martinez and examined the zip ties holding her to the tree. Ma'am, are you injured? He asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. I'm fine, James, Sarah replied calmly. Just get me out of here. Wright stood up and turned to face Officer Blake. His hand rested on his sidearm. Officer, you have exactly 10 seconds to explain why you've restrained a United States Army general. Blake opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had never been more terrified in his life. Wright was 6 feet tall and built like a linebacker. Behind him stood 40 armed soldiers, all staring at Blake with undisguised hostility. We thought, Blake stammered. You thought what? Wright demanded, stepping closer. You thought it would be fun to tie a war hero to a tree? You thought you could humiliate someone who spent her life serving this country? Master Sergeant Rodriguez pushed through the crowd of soldiers. When he saw General Martinez tied to the tree, he cursed loudly in Spanish. Then he pulled out a knife and moved toward the zip ties. Wait, Sarah said firmly. Sergeant, wait for proper authorization. Rodriguez stopped immediately, but his hand remained on the knife handle. Like all of Sarah's soldiers, he would follow her orders even when he disagreed with them. Wright looked around at the crowd of civilians the news cameras, and the terrified police officers. This situation required careful handling. One wrong move could turn it into an international incident. He pulled out his phone and called General Chen. "Sir, we've located General Martinez." The scene in Millbrook's town square looked like something from a movie. Military vehicles surrounded the oak tree where General Martinez had been tied. Soldiers in full combat gear stood at attention while news cameras captured everything. The contrast between the small-town setting and the military response was striking. General Martinez stood in the center of it all, finally free from the zip ties that had held her to the tree. She rubbed her wrists gently, but her expression remained calm and professional. Around her, 40 soldiers waited for orders from their commanding officer. The crowd of townspeople had grown to over 200. Many had come from nearby towns after seeing the videos online. They watched in amazement as the woman who had been treated like a criminal was now being treated with the highest military honor. Officer Blake stood beside his patrol car, his face pale with shock. He watched the soldiers salute General Martinez and finally understood the full scope of his mistake. He had not just arrested an ordinary woman, he had arrested one of the most important military leaders in the state. Officer Rodriguez walked slowly toward Lieutenant Colonel Wright. His hands were visible and non-threatening. "Sir, I need to apologize for what happened here today." Wright looked at Rodriguez with cold eyes. "Officer, apologies are a good start, but they don't undo what your partner did to our general." "I know, sir. I tried to stop him. I tried to tell him he was making a mistake. But Blake wouldn't listen." General Martinez stepped forward. "Lieutenant?" "Colonel Wright, I'd like to speak with Officer Rodriguez." Wright stepped aside immediately. "Yes, ma'am." Sarah looked at Rodriguez with understanding eyes. She had seen this situation many times in the military. A junior officer caught between following orders and doing what's right. "Officer Rodriguez, what's your first name?" "Miguel, ma'am." "Miguel, how long have you been a police officer?" 6 months, ma'am. I just graduated from the academy." Sarah nodded. "And Officer Blake was training you?" "Yes, ma'am. He's my field training officer. I have to work with him for another month before I can patrol alone." General Martinez understood the difficult position Rodriguez had been in. In the military, disobeying a superior officer could end your career. Police departments work the same way. "Miguel, you tried to do the right thing today. That shows character. Don't let this experience make you cynical about law enforcement." Rodriguez looked surprised. After everything that had happened, the general was giving him advice and encouragement. "Ma'am, I should have done more to stop him." "Sometimes the system makes it hard to do the right thing," Sarah replied. "The important thing is that you learn from this and become a better officer." While Sarah spoke with Rodriguez, Lieutenant Colonel Wright was coordinating with his soldiers. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, the military one, was documenting everything with photographs. Other soldiers were taking statements from witnesses. Captain Lisa Park had arrived in a separate vehicle with the base's legal officer and public affairs specialist. They immediately began damage control, making sure the Army's response was professional and appropriate. "Colonel Wright," Captain Park said, approaching with her tablet, "I've been monitoring social media. This story is exploding online. We have reporters calling from major news networks." Wright nodded grimly. "How bad is it?" "The videos have been shared over 1 million times in the last 3 hours. K2 Tree General is the top trending topic on social media. This is going to be international news." In the distance, more vehicles were approaching, but these were not military vehicles. They were state police cars and vehicles from the county sheriff's department. Lieutenant Morrison of the Millbrook Police had finally arrived on scene. He was a 20-year veteran who had been at a training conference when the incident occurred. When he got the call from Sergeant Williams, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Morrison parked his car and walked toward the crowd. What he saw made his stomach turn. Military soldiers surrounded his officers. News cameras were everywhere. The town square looked like a war zone. He approached Lieutenant Colonel Wright cautiously. "Sir, I'm Lieutenant Morrison, Millbrook Police." "I understand. We have a situation here." Wright turned to face Morrison. Lieutenant, your officer tied a United States Army general to a tree for 2 hours. I'd say that's more than a situation. Morrison looked at Officer Blake, who was still standing beside his patrol car looking defeated. Sir, Officer Blake was acting without proper authorization. This incident does not represent the values of our department. Your department's values are the least of my concerns right now, Wright replied. My concern is ensuring that General Martinez receives proper medical attention and that this incident is thoroughly investigated. General Martinez stepped forward. Lieutenant Morrison, I appreciate that you're trying to handle this professionally, but there are some things that need to happen immediately. Morrison turned to face her, and for the first time, he truly looked at the woman his officer had arrested. Even in civilian clothes, she carried herself with unmistakable authority. Her calm confidence in the face of everything that had happened was impressive. Ma'am, what can I do to help resolve this situation? Sarah pointed toward the overturned car, which had been largely forgotten during the drama. First, that injured person needs immediate medical attention. It's been over 3 hours since the accident. Morrison's eyes widened. In all the chaos, he had forgotten about the original accident victim. He immediately radioed for paramedics and rushed toward the overturned vehicle. When he looked through the broken window, he saw a middle-aged man unconscious but breathing. The man's leg was bent at an odd angle, and there was dried blood on his forehead. We need paramedics here now, Morrison shouted into his radio. We have an injured person who's been trapped for over 3 hours. The paramedics arrived within minutes. As they worked to extract the injured man from the vehicle, Morrison realized how badly his department had failed. While they were arguing about authority and procedures, someone had been suffering. General Martinez watched the paramedics work with professional interest. Her military medical training told her the man would probably survive, but his injuries could have been treated much earlier if she had been allowed to help. Ma'am, said the paramedic supervisor, approaching Sarah after they had stabilized the victim. I understand you offered medical assistance earlier. Yes, I did. Ma'am, if you had been allowed to help, this man's condition would be much better right now. He went into shock from blood loss. Early intervention could have prevented that. The paramedic's statement was recorded by several news cameras. It was now clear that Officer Blake's actions had not only humiliated a general, they had also endangered a life. Lieutenant Morrison walked back to where the soldiers and police officers were gathered. His face was grim with the realization of how badly this situation had been handled. General Martinez, he said formally. On behalf of the Millbrook Police Department, I want to apologize for the treatment you received today. Officer Blake's actions were completely inappropriate and do not represent our department's standards. Sarah accepted the apology with a nod. Lieutenant Morrison, apologies are important, but what matters now is making sure this never happens again. Yes, ma'am. Officer Blake will face disciplinary action. There will be a full investigation. That's a start, Lieutenant Colonel Wright said, but the Army will also be conducting its own investigation. When you arrest one of our generals, it becomes our business too. At that moment, another convoy of vehicles arrived, but these were not military or police vehicles. They were news vans from major television networks. Reporters from CNN, Fox News, and other national outlets had driven from the state capitol to cover the story. The arrival of national media marked a turning point. What had started as a local incident was now a national news story. Everyone present knew that what happened next would be scrutinized by millions of people. Jennifer Walsh, the local reporter who had interviewed Sarah while she was tied to the tree, approached Lieutenant Colonel Wright. Sir, can you tell us about General Martinez's military service? Wright looked at Sarah, who nodded her permission to speak. General Martinez has served our country for 20 years, Wright said, facing the camera. She has completed multiple combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. She has been awarded the Bronze Star, the Purple Heart, and numerous other decorations. She currently commands over 3,000 soldiers at Fort Harrison. And she was tied to a tree for trying to help an injured person? Yes, for over 2 hours while that injured man received no medical attention. The reporter turned to face Officer Blake, who was still standing beside his patrol car. Officer Blake, do you have any comment on your actions today? Blake looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. No comment, he said quietly, but his partner, Officer Rodriguez, stepped forward. I want to say that what happened here today was wrong. General Martinez was trying to help someone and she was treated terribly. I should have done more to stop it. Rodriguez's statement was brave but dangerous. By criticizing his training, officer and public, he was probably ending his own career. But he felt he had to speak the truth. General Martinez watched Rodriguez make his statement and felt proud of the young officer's integrity. The drive back to Fort Harrison was quiet. General Martinez sat in the passenger seat of the lead vehicle while Lieutenant Colonel Wright drove. Behind them, the convoy of military vehicles followed in perfect formation. Sarah stared out the window, at the countryside passing by. Her wrists still showed red marks from the zip ties. Her back ached from sitting against the rough tree bark for over 2 hours. But more than the physical discomfort, she was thinking about what had just happened. "Ma'am," Wright said, breaking the silence. "Are you okay?" Sarah turned to look at her aide-de-camp. James Wright had been with her for 3 years. He was like a younger brother to her. She could see the anger still burning in his eyes. "I'm fine, James. But I'm worried about you and the soldiers. What happened today was difficult for everyone." Wright's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Ma'am, with respect, what happened today was an outrage. You're a decorated general who's served this country with honor, and those police officers treated you like a common criminal. Sometimes people make mistakes, James. Sometimes they let fear and pride cloud their judgment. This wasn't a mistake, ma'am. This was deliberate humiliation. Officer Blake knew what he was doing when he tied you to that tree." Sarah sighed. She understood Wright's anger. She understood why all her soldiers were upset. But she also understood something else. Getting angry and seeking revenge would not solve anything. It would only create more problems. "James, I want you to call ahead to base. Set up a meeting with all the senior staff. We need to discuss how to handle this situation properly." "Yes, ma'am." "What's the tone going to be?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Professional, factual. We're going to focus on making sure this never happens again, not on getting revenge." Wright nodded, but she could tell he wasn't satisfied with that answer. Like most of the soldiers, he wanted justice for what had been done to their commanding officer. Back in Millbrook, Police Chief Williams had arrived at the town square just as the military convoy was leaving. He looked around at the scene with growing horror, news vans everywhere, reporters interviewing townspeople. His officer standing alone beside a patrol car looking defeated. Williams walked over to Lieutenant Morrison first. "Pete, tell me this isn't as bad as it looks." Morrison shook his head grimly. "Chief, it's worse. Blake tied a U.S. Army general to a tree for 2 hours. There are videos of the whole thing online." Williams felt like he might be sick. He had been police chief in Millbrook for 15 years. It was a quiet town with low crime rates. The biggest problems he usually dealt with were traffic accidents and noise complaints. Now his department was at the center of a national scandal. "Where's Blake now?" Morrison pointed toward the patrol car. "He's been standing there since the soldiers left. I think he's in shock." Williams walked over to his problem officer. Officer Blake looked up when he approached, and Williams could see that Blake finally understood what he had done. "Blake, you're suspended immediately. Turn in your badge and gun." Blake slowly removed his badge and service weapon. His hands were shaking. "Chief, I thought I was doing the right thing." "The right thing?" Williams's voice rose. "Blake, you tied a war hero to a tree. You humiliated someone who spent her life serving our country. How could you possibly think that was right?" "She wouldn't listen to me," Blake said weakly. "She acted like my authority didn't matter." Williams stared at his officer in disbelief. "Blake, your authority doesn't matter when you're wrong, and you were wrong about everything." Officer Rodriguez approached them cautiously. "Chief Williams, I need to report something." Williams turned to the younger officer. "What is it, Rodriguez?" "Sir, I tried to stop Blake from arresting her. I tried to tell him we should check her ID properly. I tried to convince him to let her help the injured person, but he wouldn't listen." Williams nodded. Rodriguez's statement would be important for the investigation. It showed that at least one officer had tried to do the right thing. Rodriguez, you're going to write a detailed report about everything that happened today. I want every conversation, every decision, every moment documented. Yes, sir. Williams looked around the town square one more time. Most of the crowd had left, but reporters were still interviewing people. He knew this story would be on every news channel in the country tonight, Chief, said Lieutenant Morrison, walking over to join them. I've been getting calls from county officials, state police, and even the governor's office. Everyone wants to know what happened here. Williams rubbed his forehead. What did you tell them? The truth. That one of our officers made a serious error in judgment that resulted in the mistreatment of a military officer. That was putting it mildly, Williams thought. This was the biggest crisis his department had ever faced. Meanwhile, at Fort Harrison, word of General Martinez's return had spread throughout the base. Soldiers lined the roads leading to headquarters, waiting to welcome their commanding officer home. When the convoy arrived, hundreds of soldiers stood at attention in a show of respect and solidarity. General Martinez stepped out of the vehicle and was immediately surrounded by her staff. Colonel Hayes approached first, saluting smartly. Ma'am, welcome back. How are you feeling? I'm fine, Patricia, thank you. Is the conference room ready? Yes, ma'am. All senior staff are assembled. Sarah walked through the halls of headquarters with her head held high. Soldiers saluted as she passed, their faces showing a mixture of relief and anger. She could feel their loyalty and support, which meant more to her than any medal or commendation. The conference room was packed with colonels, lieutenant colonels, and senior enlisted personnel. Everyone stood when General Martinez entered. The room was silent except for the sound of chairs scraping as people sat down after she took her place at the head of the table. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah began. I know you've all seen the videos of what happened today. I know you're angry. I know you want justice. But we need to handle this situation professionally and appropriately. Colonel Hayes spoke first. Ma'am, with respect, what happened today was an attack on the dignity of our entire organization. We can't just let this slide. Murmurs of agreement came from around the table. Master Sergeant Rodriguez stood up. General, those police officers humiliated you in front of the whole world. That's the same as humiliating every soldier in this command. Sarah held up her hand for silence. I understand your feelings, but revenge is not our mission. Our mission is to serve our country with honor and integrity. That doesn't change because of what happened today. Lieutenant Colonel Wright leaned forward. Ma'am, what about accountability? Those officers broke the law. They violated your civil rights. And there will be accountability, Sarah replied. But it will come through proper channels. We're going to work with the appropriate authorities to ensure a full investigation. Captain Park raised her hand. General, I've been monitoring the media response. This story is huge. We're getting interview requests from major news networks. How do you want to handle that? Sarah considered the question carefully. We'll provide one official statement. Professional, factual, focused on moving forward rather than assigning blame. The room fell quiet. Many of the officers looked disappointed. They wanted their commanding general to fight back harder against the people who had humiliated her. Colonel Hayes spoke again. Ma'am, I understand your position, but the soldiers need to see that we protect our own. They need to know that when someone attacks one of us, there are consequences. Sarah stood up and walked to the window overlooking the base. She could see soldiers going about their duties, preparing for evening formation. These were her people, her responsibility. Patricia, the soldiers will see that we handle this with class and professionalism. They'll see that real strength comes from controlling yourself when you have every right to be angry. She turned back to face the room. What happened today was wrong, but how we respond will define who we are as an organization. We can respond with anger and revenge, or we can respond with dignity and focus on making sure it never happens again. The officers in the room began to nod. Their general was teaching them another lesson about leadership, even in the midst of her own crisis. Back in Millbrook, the fallout from the incident was just beginning. Police Chief Williams sat in his office, fielding calls from reporters, government officials, and angry citizens. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since the videos went viral. "Chief Williams," said his secretary, sticking her head into his office. "The mayor is here to see you, and there are about 20 reporters outside wanting statements." Williams sighed. Mayor Patricia Coleman was a good woman, but she was going to be worried about the town's reputation. This incident would define Millbrook for years to come. Mayor Coleman entered the office looking stressed. "Bill, we have a problem." "I know, Pat. I'm handling it." "Are you?" "Because I've got reporters asking me if our police department has a history of civil rights violations. I've got the governor's office calling for a state investigation. I've got people on social media calling for a federal civil rights probe." Williams had been afraid of this. When videos of police misconduct go viral, it doesn't just affect the officers involved. It affects entire departments and communities. "Pat, what Blake did doesn't represent our department." 3 weeks after the incident, the effects were still being felt across the country. The video of General Martinez tied to the tree had been viewed over 50 million times. It had sparked debates about police training, military-civilian relations, and how authority should be exercised in a democratic society. At Fort Harrison, General Martinez sat in her office reviewing the final reports from the various investigations that had followed the incident. The Army's internal investigation had cleared her of any wrongdoing and praised her calm professionalism under difficult circumstances. The state investigation had found serious problems with the Millbrook Police Department's training and policies. Lieutenant Colonel Wright knocked on her door. "Ma'am, you have a visitor. Police Chief Williams from Millbrook is here to see you." Sarah looked up with surprise. "Send him in, James." Chief Williams entered the office looking older and more tired than he had 3 weeks ago. The incident had aged him considerably. He stood at attention like a soldier, though he had never served in the military. "General Martinez, thank you for seeing me. I know I don't deserve your time." Sarah gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Please, sit down, Chief Williams. How can I help you?" Williams sat down carefully. "Ma'am, I came here to apologize, personally, for what happened to you. What Officer Blake did was inexcusable. It doesn't represent the values of good police work." "I appreciate that, Chief. How is Officer Blake?" Williams looked surprised by the question. "He's been terminated, ma'am. He'll never work in law enforcement again. He's also facing federal civil rights charges." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "And Officer Rodriguez?" "Rodriguez has been cleared of wrongdoing. The investigation showed he tried to stop Blake multiple times. Actually, we've promoted him to detective. His courage in speaking out publicly helped our department begin to rebuild its reputation." "I'm glad to hear that." Rodriguez showed integrity when it was difficult. Williams shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Ma'am, I have to ask, why aren't you angrier about this? If someone had done to me what Blake did to you, I'd want his head on a platter." Sarah smiled slightly. "Chief Williams, I've been in combat. I've seen what real enemies look like. Officer Blake wasn't my enemy. He was a confused, scared man who made terrible decisions. Being angry at him won't help anyone. But ma'am, he humiliated you in front of the whole world." "No," Sarah said, firmly. "He humiliated himself. I maintained my dignity throughout the entire incident. That's something no one can take away from me." William stared at her in amazement. Even 3 weeks later, she was teaching lessons about leadership and character. "General, is there anything my department can do to make this right?" Sarah thought for a moment. "Actually, there is. I'd like to work with you to develop a training program for your officers, something that helps them recognize military personnel and understand how to work with federal officials during emergencies." Williams's eyes lit up. "You'd be willing to do that, after everything that happened?" "Chief Williams, the best way to prevent this from happening again is through education and training. I'd rather spend my time on solutions than on revenge." After Williams left, Sarah turned back to the stack of reports on her desk. The incident had generated a massive amount of paperwork, but it had also created opportunities for positive change. The Department of Defense had issued new guidance to all military personnel about dealing with local law enforcement. Police departments across the country were reviewing their own policies and training programs. Several states had passed laws requiring police officers to receive training on recognizing military identification and working with federal officials. Captain Park knocked on the door. "Ma'am, you have a call from the Pentagon. General Morrison wants to speak with you." Sarah picked up the phone. General Morrison was the Army's chief of staff, one of the most senior officers in the military. "Sarah, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine, sir. Ready to get back to normal business." "Good. Sarah, I want you to know that your handling of this situation has been exemplary. You've shown the entire country what military leadership looks like under pressure." "Thank you, sir." "Sarah, we'd like you to consider taking on a special assignment. The Secretary of Defense wants to create a new program to improve military-civilian relations. Your name came up as the obvious choice to lead it." Sarah was quiet for a moment. The assignment would mean leaving her regiment and taking on a much broader role, but it would also give her a chance to prevent other incidents like the one she had experienced. "Sir, I'm honored by the consideration. When do you need an answer?" "Take your time, Sarah. Think about it." After the call ended, Sarah walked to the window overlooking the parade ground. Her soldiers were conducting afternoon training. These were the people she had led for 3 years. Leaving them would be difficult, but she also thought about Officer Blake sitting at home with his destroyed career and ruined reputation. She thought about Officer Rodriguez, who had shown courage but nearly lost his job for doing the right thing. She thought about all the other police officers and soldiers who might face similar situations in the future. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number, but the message made her smile. "General Martinez, this is David Thompson. I was the injured man in the car accident in Millbrook. I wanted to thank you for trying to help me even though those officers wouldn't let you. I'm fully recovered now. You're a hero." Sarah typed back a simple response. "I'm glad you're okay. Take care." That evening, Sarah drove back through Millbrook on her way home. She had taken the same route several times since the incident, but this time she decided to stop in the town square. The oak tree was still there, looking ordinary and peaceful in the evening light. A small memorial had been placed at its base. Flowers, American flags, and handwritten notes from people who had been inspired by her story. Sarah read a few of the notes. "Thank you for showing us what real leadership looks like. Your dignity inspired my daughter to join ROTC. You made all military families proud." As she stood there reading, an elderly man approached. She recognized him as one of the witnesses from that day. "General Martinez, I'm Robert Chen. I was here that day." "I remember you, Mr. Chen. You were recording with your phone." "Yes, ma'am. I wanted to thank you. What you did that day, how you handled yourself, it meant a lot to people like me." "What do you mean?" "Ma'am, I'm a Vietnam veteran. When I came home from that war, a lot of people didn't treat us with respect. They blamed us for things we didn't control. Seeing how you handled disrespect with such dignity, it healed something in me." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. "Mr. Chen, thank you for your service, and thank you for standing up for me that day." "Ma'am, it was an honor." As Sarah drove home, she thought about the phone call from the Pentagon. The special assignment would be challenging, but it might also be important. Maybe she could help prevent other incidents like the one she had experienced. Maybe she could help build better understanding between military and civilian communities. 2 days later, Sarah called General Morrison with her answer. She would accept the assignment. Her work with the 3rd Infantry Regiment was done. It was time for a new mission. At the change of command ceremony a month later, over 2,000 soldiers gathered to bid farewell to General Martinez. Soldiers she had led, trained, and mentored stood at attention as she passed the regimental colors to her successor. In her final speech, Sarah talked about the incident in Millbrook, though she rarely discussed it publicly. 3 months ago, I found myself in a difficult situation. I was treated unfairly by people who should have known better, but I learned something important that day. Our character is not defined by what happens to us. It's defined by how we respond to what happens to us. She looked out at the sea of soldiers. Each of you will face challenges in your career. You'll encounter people who don't understand you, don't respect you, or don't appreciate your service. When that happens, remember that your response is what matters. Maintain your dignity. Show your character. Be better than the people who treat you poorly. The soldiers erupted in applause. Many had tears in their eyes. They were saying goodbye to a leader who had shown them what integrity looked like under the worst circumstances. After the ceremony, Lieutenant Colonel Wright, now Colonel Wright, approached Sarah for the last time as her aide-de-camp. "Ma'am, it's been an honor serving with you." "The honor was mine, James. Take care of these soldiers." "I will, ma'am." "And ma'am, for what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice with this new assignment." Sarah smiled. "I hope so, James. I hope so." 6 months later, General Martinez was in Washington, D.C. leading the new Military-Civilian Relations Office. Her first major initiative was a training program that would be implemented in police departments across the country. The program taught officers how to recognize military personnel, work with federal officials, and de-escalate situations involving service members. The program was called the Millbrook Protocol, named after the town where a small misunderstanding had escalated into a national incident. On the first anniversary of the incident, Sarah received a letter from Officer Rodriguez, now Detective Rodriguez. He had completed his probation and was thriving in his new role.